Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is your buddy, Ryan Singer. Coming you? That's not how we want to start the show. Coming to you from the frigid tundra of the great Midwest and the United States of America. I think we're on the planet Earth still. Who knows? Although I would not be surprised if someone told me there was a switch over at some point. I've got Mikey and Bub from the Strange Road.
Yo,
What's
what's
up?
happening? What's happening?
What's
What's
up?
happening? So great to be here, man. Thanks for having us.
You two. I mean, for those who are watching video, when this comes out, God, I'm loving the backdrops, loving the neon. I loved, well, first of all, the set. I mean, just a live stream dream over at the Strange Road Studios, and was when I was on there late last year.
Yeah.
2023 came on the show, and I mean it's just like a live stream dream over there. I mean, what a badass setup. And I mean, it's an operation, really. It's not even a setup. It's a full-blown operation that's happening, all things Strange Road. I believe it's a strangeroad.com. People can go check out just the myriad of different things that can happen, or that they can watch, that they can get involved in, or assistance that can be given as well, from services. And we can maybe talk a little bit about the background of launching into the show, into the live stream, the weekly live stream show. And not to mention the other, you also have like bi-weekly programs that you do as well. But
Absolutely.
it's a while. I mean, we have, when I came on the show, it was like I threatened to move into the studio and live there because that's how much fun I had. And that's when people, I think, whether they realize, I don't know if they know this, but if I'm threatening to like move into your house without without you asking me to, that's when I like you. I might have to talk to my therapist about that. But let's talk about the impetus for the show first. Let's because I really want to highlight the show for people, because it's, I mean, extremely high quality. I mean, the content is bonkers and the guests are great. I'm not just saying that because I was on there. Mike Ricksecker was on there recently as well. Yeah, so let's talk about origin stories. I love origin stories.
Absolutely. So Bub and I, first of all, we've known each other since kindergarten. So we grew up together. We're literally thick as thieves from when we were very small kids, got in a lot of trouble together, gave teachers a lot of gray hairs and our parents a lot of gray hairs throughout the years. So, we were just kind of mischievous class clowns, always trying to get a rise out of everybody. School was never the focus. It was how hard can we make each other laugh every day at school was more of our focus than anything,
Yeah.
I would say. But, we both had different directions after high school, and we kind of went our separate ways. Bub was in Dayton, I was in Columbus. He eventually became a nurse, and he can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And I kind of meandered around in sales, cell phone sales, car sales, credit card processing systems. I would take a break and go do landscaping for a year or two so I wouldn't go nuts. So I was really just, trying to find, we did a lot of creative stuff when we were kids. Bub and I were both in drama. We acted a little bit through high school, and mostly comedic plays, which we always had fun with, but knew there was creativity. And Bub being a musician, and a lot of our buddies just being very creative and just strange people. Um, but we were always into weird stuff, always into aliens, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, watching whatever we possibly could. And, always had deep conversations. And so, I kind of found my path, and went back to school and started studying film and video production and graphic design, and then got into the production industry as a freelance camera operator. Shot a ton of music festivals and bands, and so kind of got our really a lot of our experience in live event production, which is where the live streaming like you mentioned, our live stream studio that we have down here. This is a long culmination to kind of get to the point with, running a small TV show, Promo West Live, which is on NBC4 here in Columbus. Over the years, different members of our crew have run that TV show and helped Promo West with all their video. And then, 2019, we started finding our own events and different things we were chasing after in terms of live stream conferences, UFO events, disclosure events, kind of these, I guess you could say, spiritual type events where they're talking about regenerative farming and community living. And so we were kind of going all over the place, putting on these little live streams and loving it. And really thought leading into 2020, we were just going to take over the alternative conference world and help every event live stream, do AV, up the production value of what they were doing, or, give them, the idea of, a ticketed event potentially, which is what we partnered up with for this event called Dimensions of Disclosure in Ventura Beach, California. And so Bub actually came out and was our PA, Stoner, our buddy Ron, TJ, Sam, and we had the whole crew of all the guys we'd been shooting concerts with. So now we're kind of evolving into conferences, whatever we could live stream, we would. But there's just sometimes opportunities in shooting concerts. You can only take it so far, and we had kind of reached that peak. And so going into 2020. Our goal was just to do more of these live stream ticketed events where we show up, live stream the whole event, help promote and produce the business side of the stream, the ticketed events. And then COVID happened, and the slate got wiped, man. All the concerts, the festivals, the conferences, everything went away. And so Stoner and I, it's like, hey, nothing's going on. We've always wanted to do this podcast, came up with the brand, started the company, which started out as a show, as a podcast, to, keep ourselves busy while the shutdowns, where all the lockdowns were going on. And so obviously my first choice as a co-host was Bub.
Yeah.
We've had amazing rapport throughout the years, and he's my best buddy. And so, and we kind of snuck Bub. He didn't even realize it, but we got him an office.
I didn't even know they had a studio done. Like I walked in to just kind of use some space to do my job now. And
we secretly
some extra monitors and, have a little more real estate visually speaking. And then I walked in and I was kind of like, what's going on over there? Like, that looks all done. And it looks like a full studio now. And you have a backdrop and you have all your chairs and your camera. I was just like, what's going on? Like, yeah, we're going to fire the podcast back up. I'm like,
yeah,
okay. And it was just go from there on,
yeah,
and from Mikey's portion of, kind of his background and how he's gotten all of this to where it is, because that's on him and Stoner, right? Like I've been around to be a part of it or see it in action, or say the early part of getting like even the podcast started up. And, it was tough because they're trying to do a lot of things at once, and they're trying to do a business, and they're trying to do this podcast. And so there's a lot of spinning plates to keep up there. And like he said, with COVID, it really just kind of like, it took the wind out of the sails. Just everything got a little bit shifted around. And then coming out of that, and him and Kyle, Mikey, really keeping the gas pedal to the floor, I would say, and having that final push, like, big concerted effort by many parties, but getting it started and over the goal line and all those kind of intangibles was Mikey. And then when I walked in and saw it, I was just like, oh, like
all the technology
it's ready
that
to
you
go.
see is all Stoner, and Stoner
He's the wizard.
He's literally the wizard, and everything that you see in terms of the production, we all have input, but technically how to pull all this off is Stoner. He is literally a tech wizard. He's a genius. And I've been working with him, these live streams and all these things, everything that you see in the looks and the branded framing and lower thirds and all these little kind of extra things. That's a lot. that's Stoner kind of developing that look that we use for the podcast. We've been doing that for clients for years. So we've been helping them to, whether it's a virtual event, a hybrid event. So all the graphics and all the cool stuff you see, Stoner's been developing this stuff and building all that out down here via gigs and clients. So, we've been basically a full service live stream video production company. And, Stone's been a huge part of just like all the technological wonderment that's down here is from his brain, and literally just dreams it up and then somehow figures it out. It's like, all right, man, you need this to go get that. Great. Sounds awesome.
It's a sight to behold. And, I implore people to go and find, you can go to the YouTube channel and you can see, all the streams, they live there,
Right.
post being live. And it's one thing to have the setup, right? And Stoner is a wizard, and it's a beautiful, like I said, a dream over there. And it's a whole other thing to have the interest level and the passion for a subject to keep a show going. And I think there's lots of really sleek, fancy things that have gone the way of the dinosaur just because a lack of interest in maybe or passion in the people who are doing them, right? And to have something that is meaningful to you and also high quality, it's quite a combination. And so I'm interested in you talk about, any kid who has I'm going to go out on a limb here and say any kid who has a relatively decent childhood is able to explore their mind and their imagination and UFOs and all these kinds of things, right? Where they're not worried about other things that they have to be doing that aren't maybe for kids, like if they have to grow up too fast.
Right.
Sure. And so, I think as kids, we're all interested in the amazing and the wonderful and the supernatural and the paranormal. But for some, it takes hold. And for some reason, it fosters and grows into something bigger, even as we're adults. Because it's a whole nother thing to be adults and just be all in on this stuff.
Right.
I think we'll agree, right? So there has to be some kind of foundational moment or a level of curiosity and love for a subject that is higher than normal for you guys to be doing what you're doing.
Agreed.
So I'm curious how that's fostered, where it comes from, what happened, not what happened in a bad way, but you know what I mean?
Sure. What stokes that fire, or how did we get to?
Yeah, I think
this
both,
is the
right?
subject matter and
this is
where
the
we
subject,
spend our time.
Yeah, because it's a lot of time spent.
Absolutely. And I'd say for me, it's just I've always been that kid that's been like, why? There's no answer that's good enough. There's never, I was
when someone says what's 2 + 2 and then another person says 4, you're like, but why is it 4, man?
Maybe.
I might possibly, but I'll never forget this. My wife and I were on our honeymoon, and we're up in the Canadian Rockies, and we're hiking with this guy. And I just had this question of, I was talking about having kids, which I don't have any kids, but at the time is just, my question was, how do you as the parent have the right answer all the time? Like when your kids ask you this, like my parents just always had the right answer, or it seemed that way. And I'll never forget, he said, it's not whether you're right or wrong, it's the conviction in your voice. He's like, that's what they're, it's the mother duckling syndrome. If that mother duck goes off the bridge into the water, all the ducklings will follow it. If that duck portrays confidence and, knowledge and ability and survivability, its offspring will follow. And I think that's what he was kind of saying there. But I've never been satisfied with a lot of answers, and I don't know that I ever will be. And that's kind of one of the scarier parts. Like, you talk about this being an obsession, there's a good reason why. Like, I'm obsessed with asking questions. I'll say that openly. Like, that's why I love a good story. That's why I when you were on the show, obviously you were, blew my mind. I don't know how many times. And I was just like, this is why I do the show. That's why I'm here talking. I love it.
Yep.
Well,
The
just real quick, I do want to say, like, I remember, and I mean, I can vouch for your curiosity,
Yeah,
um, and it's it's weird because there's that saying, "Curiosity killed the cat," and
sure.
and it makes me wonder why that is the only phrase I can think of when it comes to, like, off the top of my head anyway, about curiosity, because curiosity is seemingly a very good thing. And the one saying I can think about it is like, no, be careful, don't be too curious about stuff.
Yeah.
Stop asking questions over here, okay?
Well, yeah, you can burn yourself out. And
That too.
I definitely did that with many subjects that just aren't fun anymore for me to talk about because of just how loaded, name any conspiracy. And I just want it, you go too deep into dark stuff, it you know, it tends to have an effect on your mental health. And that was me where I just started getting into ancient civilizations and more shamanic wisdom, looking into Native American spirituality and Buddhism and a lot of different things. And paranormal cryptids have always been there, UFOs, um, but started getting really obsessed with like lost technology, ancient civilizations, being obsessed with Egypt, and then earthworks here in Ohio. And so, as we're kind of going along, we're on the side obsessed with just strange things through,
Right.
as long as we've kind of, I remember in first grade can't not being able to wait until, maybe on Unsolved Mysteries there was a UFO episode or a ghost episode.
Just for the chance
Um,
of it happening.
yeah, because, the really famous demonic haunting, was on Unsolved Mysteries. I can't remember the guy's name. That was the first time I ever heard of a demonic haunting before, was on Unsolved Mysteries. And it was the gentleman that got arrested and he was making it rain in his cell. That's
Wow.
one of the things that I remember that the guards reported, that this guy was like chanting different language, speaking in tongues, growling, and then they go in, they hearing these drips, and in just inside his cell, literally the walls have water coming down them, and he's telling them, "I can make it rain." And I'm like, whoa, 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 seeing things about crop circles that are just kind of like randomly in the news always grab my attention. I remember being a little kid of just being, and now me and Paranormal You, The Strange Road,
Right.
Appalachian Intelligence, Tony Merkel's The Confessionals. I mean, there's so much independent content for strange things and cryptids. And when we were kids, there just wasn't that much. So, you know, I remember just being so stoked when you just stumble upon something paranormal on TV back in the day. And that always hooked me. And so, when it came to starting the show, it's like, well, what do we know best? What have we been completely, and our subjects are very wide. Some people might get upset with us because, one episode you're going to have Ryan Singer talking about, paranormal encounters, and then we have D.A. Roberts on to talk about the Dog Man.
Right.
And we have a DMT researcher from Holland, Zeus Thibodeau, to talk about psychedelics. So it's like, if you're a cryptid guy, you really love cryptids, well, it might be a few episodes until we have another Bigfoot researcher on. And you might not like ancient civilizations, or maybe you like all of it like us. And so we're just focused on talking about what we want to talk about, and hopefully other people enjoy it,
Yeah.
and trying to stay true to that.
And I think, you know what? I have a feeling that this is going to be a beefy episode. So we're going to take a quick break here for, I'm going to throw in some commercials now. I don't know how long we've been recording, but just as a reminder to the listeners, you can go to patreon.com/Ryan Singer. And for $3 a month, you get commercial free interviews. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be wonderful? No, no marketing. I have no idea what commercials are going in here right now, but I guess you can tell me. So we'll be right back. And we're back. I got Mikey and Bub here from the Strange Road. We're talking about origins and interest in the paranormal, all things strange, esoteric, supernatural, mystical, conspiratorial. And what's interesting is, I mean, because I think, between the three of us, we've been interested in this, all these kind of, wild, we're woo-woo wild ones, I would say. And, there's decades of just consumption of information between the three of us. And I'd be interested on your perspective about where you think the paranormal world is heading, which isn't a conversation I have very often with other people. But from where, because I don't know if there's any kind of way you would, I don't know, label or characterize is the word I'm looking for, just in general. Because, when you think about, the feelings that are associated with certain things that we think about.
Sure.
Like everyone has a feeling when I say dad. Well, when I hear paranormal, I have a very specific feeling about it.
Okay.
I'm kind of like, oh, like it's kind of a wondrous, it's wonder, but there's also a little bit of fright involved. And I think you were kind of touching on that a little bit about the demonic possession, like hearing about something like that as a kid for the first time. It's like, what the fuck? Are you kidding? What?
Right.
So, I mean, I have many feelings associated with paranormal, but I'm curious if, like, what you used to think as when you were younger, if that still applies today, and or what changes have occurred to make you view the paranormal in a different light.
I know Bub, I think you were kind of completely sold that Bigfoot wasn't real up until kind
Oh
of
yeah.
very recently. So
Oh,
he
Yeah.
kind of
Oh.
discarded it.
oh,
Oh
I've
yeah.
always been a
Yeah.
believer, whether it's, I've just heard enough stories and testimonials, and when you look into, like I said, the ancient civilizations, the ancient cultures, the Hopi, all of the kind of, they all have these stories about these cryptids and these skinwalkers or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then, you meet enough people and you hear their stories yourself. And the Appalachian giant TJ from Southern Ohio stayed at his 135-year-old cabin. Just feels like a place where some weird stuff probably would happen. And when he tells you about the stories of what goes on around his cabin there in Southern Ohio, and that's an area of trauma too. That was the everything had been clear cut out of those hills in Southern Ohio. And so, you see pictures from like 120 years ago, and there's nothing. They've been literally completely mined out. So the land itself kind of has this weird vibe. It's really ancient foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So, the oldest mountains in the world. That's the Granny Witches and the Skinwalkers. Southern Ohio has its Skinwalker. These little things that look like chewed up bubble gum. They look like a piece of chewed up bubble gum, and you'll see them scurrying around out there in the woods. Um, and so, it's paranormal. To answer your question earlier about where the paranormal, I think it's just going to keep kind of burgeoning and burgeoning until these conferences and these kind of events get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't see it stopping. As far as like the zeitgeist, some of the biggest TikTok videos or Instagram reels that we've produced or put out there, you have no idea what they're going to do. You put them out there, you think a video is really great, and it does nothing. And then you put out a TikTok about this one just off the cuff cryptid, and it goes 1 million on Instagram and
Right.
500,000 on TikTok. It's like, so a lot of our paranormal videos do really, really well in short form video. So I know people love ghosts and demonic stuff right now, and people love Bigfoot and cryptids. That seems like
Yeah.
those two specific things are kind of just steamrolling.
I mean, growing up, it felt like kind of like you were saying earlier, Mikey, about how like we didn't have that many avenues to watch all this stuff, get all this information. Like I feel like the Netflix documentary they had about Ted Bundy, where they're like, we just couldn't catch him. We didn't have the internet back then. But like literally, we didn't have the internet back then. There was so much you could not do, couldn't research. You either had to find the book or the institution or some weird uncle or aunt or relative that gave you some information or like
Yeah.
slipped you a book on like, cryptids. You did, like, because it wasn't just local fanfare. And if you wanted to find it, it was hard. It wasn't in, our BFE libraries. We didn't have books on stuff like this, I'm sure. So it was a much more cloistered of
I found a
information.
few.
Right. But I mean, what you did have, or like what we did have as our long running stories were mostly like X Files, Unsolved Mysteries, and X-Files was the one that really gave me the most like
Leonard Nimoy's
eye-opening to all the different theories. And all these X-Files is based on a lot of real stories, a lot of historical accounts. Like they use a lot of real firsthand data to create a lot of those episodes. So stuff like that. But like I think our bandwidth was smaller. We had like Sasquatch, and we had like Loch Ness, and we had like Ghosts with sheets, and that was it. We didn't have demons and poltergeists and this and that, and then it just went nuts, and it just got more and more. But to another point is, maybe people don't really want to talk about all these experiences, right? So you had a lot of people that I'm sure that are going, you know what, I'm just going to sit on this because I'm not going out there and talking about this. I have like a family and kids and a job and whatever in a community, and I need to just not be that person. How many people sit there in silence and don't ever say anything about stuff like this? I would say it's actually a majority.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, more and more though. I think people are more and more comfortable,
right?
Just out in public. I don't know if I'm just a magnet for it, but my wife's the person she works for, her boss or coworkers. It's just like I get these questions now. It's like, oh, am I just that guy? Or
once people find out you're into it, you're a safe space.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, and I'm sure you probably have that, Ryan, where comedian friends or people that you've hung out with in the past probably only talk to you about certain experiences or things. But
I've just been told I have that face, and I don't know what that means, but apparently I'm a safe space, like you're saying. Like I had somebody tell me that when I was a nurse once. They were like, "Oh, you just have that kind of face." I was like, "What does that mean?" Even they're like,
"Well, I mean, there's something to the idea that you were called into that profession, and not trying to be too flippant about it, but
no,
there's something to it." And
I've also said that, Ryan. I told Bub,
I do miss it from time to time.
You're doing shamanic work, even though
I was doing different medicine than most.
Yeah, you were doing real energy.
Still giving the medications, but it'd be like this. You go to a restaurant, right? And if that chef is making you a cheeseburger or a vegetarian dish, whatever it is, but they don't eat it, they don't taste it, they don't, they're not imbuing it with the care and the love and attention. You taste it. I don't care who you are. You can taste the difference when somebody cares about what they're doing in that food. You can feel the difference when somebody cares about you, when they're actually taking care of you. And I used to always tell people, like, you'll know in the first 5 minutes that you meet me that I'm there for the right reason. I'm not there just for a paycheck. When I did it, I wasn't just there for this. I'm there because I truly do believe and understand that I have been the person in the bed for the procedure. I know what that likes to be on, feels like to be on the other side of that coin, to be like, my God, like I'm putting a lot of trust in somebody to take care of me. So it wasn't hard for me. And it just, I can put on other people's perspectives pretty quickly.
That's a great way to distill it because I don't think many of us who have been lucky enough to not have to spend a ton of time in situations like that, where we're in hospitals or wherever,
right,
to think of it's the perspective of like, I'm trusting people to take care of me.
Right. It's not your car. It's not your computer. It's not your microphone. It's you. It's your kidney. It's your liver. It's your heart. It's your whatever it is, So
and what's scarier than that?
Nothing. Well, and your life's on pause. Now you can't do anything. You're stuck in the hospital. You got dogs, kids, wife, business, whatever, house, whatever it is. That's a monkey wrench. So I used to tell coworkers all the time, like, you really have to give people a wide berth in these situations. Like the patient, like, they're not crazy. They don't have a psychosis. Well, maybe they have a psychosis that's been induced from a hospital stay. Sure. That's understandable because that's not the routine. You break somebody's routine, it's really easy to start getting them to frazzle out. So again, just my personality, like Mikey has said, is somehow worked its way out through that as being a nurse, or either through music, or I even think through this show. Somehow I'm using it. Whatever that quality is, whatever that characteristic is, somehow I'm able to translate it, even over airwaves, even over video. In person, I hope that people get the vibe that I'm trying to give out, which is like what you said. If I walk in your studio and I say I want to move in, it's not just because it's that atmosphere, it's that energy in the air. You can feel it.
Yeah, we call it the bro zone, Ryan. We call it the bro zone.
The bro zone. Trying to take the word back. Trying to take the word bro back.
And, and because honestly, for us, the bro was always a joke.
It
We
was.
always used bro as a way to like make fun of
That's how it started.
the bros,
It
right?
started because I wanted to get all of you guys out on the jet skis, and you guys were all spent because we'd been up all night, and this was like literally 6:37 in the morning, and that lake was glass. And I was like, "Come on, bro! Oh, bro, we gotta go, bro! Oh, come on, it's like glass out there, bro!" And everybody got so
Yeah.
sick of hearing me
I
say
was
that
laughing so
that
hard.
finally our one friend got up and got me a jet ski working, and he got out there and he was like, "Oh, this is pretty awesome." And then like the next one was like, "Oh, it's great." It's like nobody went to bed. Everybody just like stayed up and rallied, and
Went
we ended up.
tubing.
But yeah, we definitely started it off as a giant satire of we're in the middle of Ohio. We're definitely not surfer bros,
Yeah,
but
for
we
sure.
were stealing that
You're,
essence.
you're jet ski bros, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I want to circle back on something real quick, just
Sure.
in case people of your fans of your show are listening. We talking about you just never know what's going to pop, right? And it is interesting that things that we could have talked about 10 years ago, and specifically from firsthand experience, I can tell you where 99.9% of the people are going to be like, wow, you're crazy, or people tell me people think you're crazy, talking specifically about a shapeshifter situation, my encounter with a shapeshifter. And it was the timing of all of that was so strange, what happened on your show, because I told that story like I've told a bunch of times on your show, and you guys made the TikTok clip out of it, just a short little thing, and next thing you know, it starts kind of really popping off right after I hear from her for the first time in years.
Weird
Asking
timing.
me to take down the interview, which I did immediately. And it was really strange. And you guys were great about it.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, because I remember I checked in once when it first got put up, and then I checked in later and I was like, what is happening? Right. Like I saw like the comments were like almost like 900 comments. And I was like, I can't do this to my mind. I can't.
A rough place to be in those TikTok comments.
And we talked about like the sleuthy nature of, of something being viral, especially something that's, and listen, I get it. It's incredibly intriguing.
Oh, it's the Streisand effect.
Oh, what's that? What does that mean? I don't know the Streisand
not
effect.
necessarily that we did it. It would have been more of if we'd have been like, don't look at this, don't look at this, like, which I guess we kind of did, but it did. So the Streisand effect is, don't look at this, more people look at it. The more you tell somebody not to look at it, or don't touch it, or
like, don't you dare click this link, or things like that. Yeah.
I think, Ryan, when they saw that they went to because we saw in the charts where your show and our show were just like crazy in a spot that we're not normally at, at least for us. Like we're not usually charting that high, but one of our friends had pointed out to us, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, it's this TikTok video is just going thermonuclear.
Oh, I didn't even realize. So like, you're talking about the podcast charts?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize any of that stuff was happening. But
it'll definitely correlate.
They were going over to your show, trying to find the source of the story in the episode from your show. Once they found out that you had taken down the show, that's when it really started popping off, and the engagement was like, "Oh, he probably just made it up."
So you did do the Streisand effect,
right?
Ryan might have started it a little bit. I forgot about that. Okay, you took it down, and then that sent more people over to ours and whatever. But
wow,
I just started going to bed, and I'm like, okay, we're at 30,000. Then wake up and we're at 50,000, and then next day they got 100,000. And I was like, again, it wasn't like 10, 20 million, 100, whatever, but it's still like way more than we're used to of like,
it's still a pretty niche thing, right?
attention. Yeah. And if we wouldn't have stopped it, I don't think it would have stopped itself for a while yet, because it was still chugging away.
And I get it too. Like, and what's crazy was, I took it down from the podcast feed, and I forgot that I had reposted it as a thing previously before that. So it was still there. Gotcha. As a different, so it was essentially, it was two different episodes of the podcast, and I didn't realize that until someone told me, because people were still finding it and listening to it. All they had to do is do like one extra click search
from initial interview that you released with. She was on it, right?
Yeah.
So from that initial one until we did that episode with you, what time span are we talking about? Was it a couple
7
years?
Maybe 6 or 7 years? It was out there for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there was also a YouTube version that I had put up that I forgot about.
Yeah.
So, and then it was like a day or two
we
after
saw
that. Yeah.
By the way, we saw
okay.
that, and I was like, because it was unlisted, so I was like,
Yeah,
if
it was
these
linked
TikTokers,
somewhere. I don't know where.
yeah, but I
Uh,
was like, if they were real sleuths, there would have been some fresh comments in YouTube because it was there, and I'm like, if I could find it, I'm just really
yeah.
surprised that
Did you alert me to it being up still?
I
I
think
think
I
you did, because
did.
I totally
Yeah,
spaced out and didn't even realize it.
yeah,
Anyway, I mean, and I get it too. It's like, we can talk, and I think, especially in the last 5 to 7 years, like the conspiracy world and the paranormal have kind of, I used to always say like all roads lead to Rome when it comes to all of this stuff, and I
mm-hmm.
figured it was only a matter of time before they all just crashed into one another. But
Sure.
and
Yeah.
this is a great example of people are like, oh, this is a conspiracy here. He's talking about this story on this show. And then you go to his thing, and then, oh, how convenient. It's
Yeah.
about to
Gone.
take it down, right?
Right.
And
Or you're a snake oil salesman and you're baiting them, whatever you want to say. But I mean, sometimes doing the right thing does look shady. And I guess maybe that's something to keep it in the back pocket in the, forays that we go into here with the topics, always kind of, that's one thing I learned from I would say a mentor of mine is, even if I want to believe something, I don't go in believing it. I have to go in impartial, right? Like, and I have to keep that balance.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it makes me think about too, this idea that, it's like, it's one thing to do the right thing, right? And I think we all want to do that, and we all strive to try to do the right thing as best we can.
Right.
And especially when there's there's lives, and there's people's feelings and lives, to consider. And not everybody is really that worried about that. I mean, I think they are. I mean, I think that's me being too judgmental, but at all costs, like to get to get to a thing, whatever that thing is, at all costs is not what we're worried about here.
Right.
And so it was like, you guys handled it great and were very generous with me about it all. And the idea too that the paranormal is it's a human thing. And my buddy Jim Perry talks about this a lot, about the paranormal experiences. Basically, it's like, well, what effect on the human being are these experiences are having? And that's like the most probably important part of this whole phenomena, is like, what effect is it having on human beings? And when it comes to like sharing the stories or digging deep into like, the Serpent Mounds or UFOs or shapeshifters, Bigfoot, like what are the effects? What does it mean for the human story, right? And Bub, you talk about wanting to know why,
Right.
and I think if we're lucky, we get a glimpse maybe of why when we examine that side of things, right? And because at the end of the day, like our whole history, our whole life, our memories, everything is a story. These are all just stories, and sometimes the stories piss us off, and they don't, we can't have access to the stories the way we want to because of certain things that happen. But
Right.
I'm curious when it comes to, the paranormal story, the unknown story that is unfolding, especially with modern technology nowadays. But I don't want to go all save the cat or or the hero's journey here on this like big picture thing. So I'm kind of popping this question on you guys, but where do you think we are in the story? I used to tell, sometimes
Wow.
I'll be like, okay, well, where are we in the movie? Because at like 75-80 minutes for those people.
Stop. That's such a great question.
So it's like, where are we? Because I don't think we're at the all is lost moment. That's what they call, like, if you watch any movie, 75 minutes in, everything goes to shit.
Yep.
Anywhere from 75 to 80 minutes. That's just structure of screenwriting.
The end of Act 2.
The end of Act 2. The all is lost. And the dark night of the soul moment, right? I'm curious where you think we are, because I think some people might say we're in the dark night of the soul now, or at least we're entering it. I'm not so sure we are. I'm not so sure we're on either. I don't know which side I'd say we're on, but I'm asking you a question I don't know the answer to.
Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think about this all the time because I love long cycles of time, learning about the Kali Yuga, the Mayan calendar. Why were they tracking 48, 58,000 years of time spans?
Wow.
What were these systems of time? Why were they so upset? Like, we can't even remember what happened 100 years ago. We didn't even have the internet. It's just like some dude wrote it down in a newspaper or some historian wrote it, but it's from his perspective. Or, how do we even really know what happened eons ago? Why are they tracking these long stages of time? And I always wonder if this is the Kali Yuga or the end of the last quatrain that the Mayans talk about, or is it we're at the end where it was the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages? Was that at the bottom, and now we're coming up into this growing pains for the last 12 few thousand years as we're kind of rising up into higher states of consciousness? Or are we actually evolving, but we're just going through the growing pains of all this new technology? But really, we actually are evolving consciously. It's just right now with all the fighting and AI and so much data that we're all overwhelmed with, that we're kind of just trying to figure out what that is for us next, or where does our civilization go? I think it's going to go into, if we don't screw it up, I think we have a chance to evolve into one of these really advanced civilizations that you hear about with Atlantis, or the pre-dynastic Egyptians, which I don't think the dynastic Egyptians built the pyramids. I just don't. I think they were around thousands of years before them, that there's some ancient culture that got really freaking advanced, and a cataclysm happened, and these cycles of time end, and we rebuild our civilization again. And so are we still evolving out of the dark ages? We have the Renaissance, we have the Industrial Revolution, we have the internet age, now we have the AI age. And so I think if AI doesn't take over and it turns into a Skynet situation, I think we have a chance to really evolve into a really advanced, harmonic, higher vibrating civilization. If not, then it's going to be thermonuclear war. It's almost like we have a path that we have to take right now, and it's very much at that Y right now. That's where we're at in time. Is we can go to the better timeline if we want, if we all stop fighting with each other. And divide and conquer is it's a real thing. And to tell me that there aren't people in control that are trying to divide, you can't tell me they're not. It's obvious. Just look at all the symptoms right now of our culture. um, but we have a chance to take that, whatever fork, the better fork.
Take the better fork.
Yeah.
The time, I mean, I've been trying to do a joke about this in my act lately, and it depends on the makeup of the room, but it's like, hey, the time of the alpha male is done. Look where it's gotten us. Everybody's like, you got to be an
Right.
alpha male. It's like, well, I'm a gentle guy usually. I what people would call a pussy, I guess, historically.
Come on, bro.
So it's like, but it's like, yeah, that's, it's time for the beta male. I think the alpha male we've seen the destruction of the environment, the warfare, and everybody's like, oh, you got to be the, alpha male. It's like, well, where has that gotten us? We don't need that anymore. And you see it play out. And I think that's the people that I think you're talking about I think they're just incredibly of an alpha mindset. It's like, I take what's mine because it's mine because I took it.
Oh,
You understand?
I don't know if that mindset is as predominant, or maybe I'm just ignorant to it because I'm just not how I think, or spheres of influence I'm in usually, hopefully. But
Ego driven.
ego to me in general is just not. I know I have a little bit of it, hopefully, but I've really just been against it for a long time and never really appreciated people with egos. But I mean, if anything, maybe it's cyclical, maybe it's a whole, like, yeah, maybe at one point that was a needed archetype, but it's not as much anymore. Maybe we recognize that, like, in moments you need that, whether it's X, Y, or Z. But I think more or less what's happening is if you ask me, like I would say, I'm always at a quandary because I can't decide if it's the end of humanity or the beginning of it. Because like, right, we
Yeah,
talked about how much we love eggnog, Ryan, and this is
Oh,
that
you still got some?
it's
it
it's
is
the
real.
stuff, right? And it's in a small, convenient, like personal sized. Don't get me
Yep.
wrong. If this was a whole quart, I'd drink the whole thing right now. But I have this in one hand, and on the other hand, we're going to make AI robots. They have, autonomy at some point further going forward to kill people. We will do that. We'll give a algorithm. We'll give an intelligence that is non-human because we're going to want to remove ourselves so far from war that we're,
We're already doing it with drones.
if we still did hand-to-hand
know.
combat, would we do all these wars? Would people really want to go out in the trenches across from each other with a bayonet, and march and be like, all right, in another 20 paces, either you're stabbing me in the gut or I'm stabbing you in the gut. I'd be like, dude, no, this is not happening. Like, I'm gonna go get something to eat. I'm gonna get a
Yeah.
cheeseburger. Like,
Especially
screw
with the
this.
access to information now.
Right. So, but that whole like, I think that's what scares me the most is I feel like I'm a dualist kind of guy at heart, yin and yang, good and bad, this and that, whatever. And I developed a theory a little while ago, and whether it's right or wrong, it's just kind of more like a thought experiment in my head, in my laboratory. But the thinking of the duality of nature of like good and bad. So is it as we go forward and we get, Starlink through the sky and everybody's got internet everywhere and it's blazing fast and you could be in the middle of the Congo, watching this right now and streaming it, whatever it is, all of the advancements we have, do we also on the other side of that, however far it's swung in the good direction, does it also have to balance out by swinging equally into the dark, bad, scenarios and things that are going on just now in the world in general and conversations that are happening and certain things that are starting to matriculate a little bit more. And I don't really want to go into them or put too fine a point on it, but just, again, like things that I never thought would start to come up and become topics and be maybe sculpted upon and hopefully put to rest in a certain way. Maybe that is because there's so much good, we got to show the bad too. You know what I mean? Maybe it's this whole
Pound of
balancing act. Yeah. I don't know. That scares me though, because it's like, as Mikey said, maybe we get to that, we'll be that civilization that gets to that precipice, or, we make it to that Atlantean or whatever. I would love to think that, and I'm rereading Ishmael now. I've got it
What an
right here, right? So
what an incredible book.
Right. And so I was thumbing through that today and I started to get back into it. And I remember one of the concepts was, the whole technological society that's advanced and they're off the cliff and they're on the glider and they keep going, we'll pull up, we'll pull up, we'll pull up, we'll pull up, we'll pull up. And they goes, and they never do. And so you see this society fell and this society fell and this society fell and this one fell. And he's like, and this is why, because they kept saying, we'll pull up, we'll do it, we'll take care. And they never did, and so that's what's like, is that where we're at too? Like, do we keep saying it's fine and one day we'll take care of it and, we'll plant another tree? Is our environment really that screwed up? Sometimes I don't know. But I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I need clarity. And that's again why I'm a why person. I need to know for myself. Like, and I guess maybe that's why it keeps driving me. I need to ask more questions and, probably give myself more anxieties, but
so we're either on the last page or the first page for you. Is kind of
for me.
it,
I
right?
think we're in a choose your own adventure.
Pretty much.
That hopefully we are, picking the right letters on the floor in the Indiana Jones film where, the floor falls out if he doesn't spell Jehovah right or whatever it is, and that's because again, I mean, we can have fairly big missteps and still recover. But I think once we get to a point of if we start to, what I'm afraid of is losing just so much faith in different institutions and just historical community archetypes of, hey, that's a firefighter, they put out fires, hey, that's a police officer, they do this, hey, once we no longer have any of those archetypes we can hold, or we don't trust them enough, or it becomes a debate, just whatever you want to say about it, that's where I get concerned of like, I think there's a lot of erosion in what we used to hold as just like, oh, the banking industry's good and good natured, the investments, Wall Street, whatever,
pharmaceuticals,
whatever you want to say. Yeah, it's just, there just seem to be so many checkered pasts and question. I mean, Jeff was on with Smithsonian. We have to ask them, are they doing really good research and work? Stuff like that. It's
Jeff Jeffrey Wilson found out that literally the inception of the Smithsonian was founded in fraud.
Right.
From the very beginning,
Born in
the
fraud.
Smithsonian was born in fraud, along with other early historical societies. Ohio Historical Society here in Ohio, we have, it's now Ohio History Connection.
Ohio History
It's
Connection.
a private corporation. They're not real interested in preservation from just what I've seen. I've heard plenty of stories. And just it really seems like,
So it's a money thing.
Ohio,
It's got to be a money thing, right?
they
Or
got that gift shop. They
That's the
got that
problem.
those parking fees. That's what they're really interested
so
in
it's like a
is
shelter for, it's a way to make money.
yes. Yes.
Probably, I would say.
And you have groups like Jeffrey Wilson and Friends of the Serpent Mound that literally since 2002 or 3 have been holding events, raising money. So they would have lost the property. OHC, Ohio History Connection, would have lost the property in the early 2000s. But the local people banded together to fix up and trim all the trees, clear away all the bushes, pick up all the stuff in the parking lot, and mowed the grass. It's a huge property, so I mean it takes tons of maintenance. So they ended up founding this organization called Friends of the Serpent Mound as a 501c3 to basically help operations and preserve the mound for years when they could no longer afford to lease that property or to own that property. They didn't have any money to keep up with the property. And so now Jeffrey's group, Friends of the Serpent Mound, is enemies of Ohio History Connection. And they're giving them so much pushback. They canceled their lighting of the serpent on the winter solstice. You're not allowed to have these events or little ceremonies that our friends Tom and Terry, they canceled anything at the event and basically try to label you a racist if you're if you're not following a certain rule. So they're getting a lot of pushback and really bad publicity. And anybody out there can look into this and do a little bit of research and understand that Tom and Terry's alternate universe and the House of Fake Cops Rock Shop and the Friends of the Serpent Mount, they're amazing people. And so
Oh, yeah.
there's just
Great
really
people.
weird things that have happened over the last 5-6 years since they've kind of forgot about the
it's
locals
It's
and
narrative control,
push them aside.
and yeah, ultimately probably goes towards money. I mean, let's be honest, most people care about something if there's money involved. That's why I tend to think all of sports are now kind of screwed with all the betting and FanDuel and this and that. And it's hard to watch a professional sporting event anymore without thinking it's all rigged, so it just gets into one of those where it's just a control thing, and like not even asking people to change the background of it, but just having that property be available for people to just even hold space there at any capacity, to where it's just
Can't.
like it's really
Yeah.
strange. Yeah. And the relative, I would say, non-celebrity nature of the area for however long. Like, again, I didn't know about it forever. I don't even
We
know
grew
what
up
year
here.
you first took me there, but it wasn't like decades and decades ago. It's within the
It's like
last decade.
2012 or
Right.
something like
It's
that.
really
Hmm.
recent for me. So it's not like, this has been around and I remember going there too, just thinking like, oh, nobody's here. And like, you still have the observation deck at Serpent Mountain. That's probably not still fixed. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not going to do anything with it. They probably just
Yeah.
won't build it up, and they don't want people to go to the top of it and be able to see the serpent from the, raised up viewpoint, Mike. I don't know why they're doing that, but
It's wild that, I mean, that's the reason that the
it'd
structure
be
is
like going to
even
the
there,
Grand
but
Canyon and they'd put up a big glass wall. Like, nope, you can't get any close. Again, I get it that there are rather questionable humans out there that I just saw in a video the other day too on Twitter or X or whatever, climbing over the, advised containment at the Grand Canyon and going over the railing. And I'm like, no, you don't do that. Like, that's why they built a railing there. Like,
yeah,
certain things
it's
are
for,
for
it's
your
for
own
you.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, dummy. Come on. Like, you're not
Yeah.
invincible. I mean, I'm guessing it was
Oh,
probably a young person, but well, let's take a quick break here and we're going to
yeah.
come back, maybe switch gears a little bit. We'll see what happens. And I got Mikey and Bub here with me for just a little bit longer. And we're going to get into all things Strange Road, all things, maybe we'll talk about some things that are coming up as well. And but we'll be right back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month gets you no commercials. So we'll be right back. And boom, we're back. And if you're a patron, we never really left. But and even if you're not a patron, we wouldn't leave you like that. Unless you had like a digital failure, then we were gone, and then you had to reboot us in your mind or in your ears, whatever. You get it. The Strange Road, strangeroad.com is the website. It's like probably the main portal. Is that accurate?
Yeah, strangeroad.com. You can get basically to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Our YouTube channel has a bunch of, not just the podcast, but we've done, a bunch of cool interviews. We have some stuff we've captured from live events and conferences and presentations. So, go check out all that.
And okay, let me ask you this, because I know we were talking about the future, but because we touched on this a little bit, there was a hint about it. But I'm curious for both of you. The show, what is the biggest maybe change in you since the beginning to where we are now? I mean, because hopefully we're ever changing, but I'm curious because I know, Bub, we were talking about Bigfoot for you. Maybe we'll kick off with that one and then go to Mikey.
Sure.
But I'm curious about, I don't even know, maybe you don't even consider that the biggest change in point of view or belief or whatever since the show, but I'd be curious what that is.
I mean, there have been actually a number, just again, because what I have looked at what we're doing with the podcast as is just this device, machine, a vehicle to have these conversations and get to ask these really interesting questions and questions that people may not have gotten to ask before, and I call it human archaeology. That's what I enjoy about it. I'm going to pick through somebody and try to again, it comes from nursing. I really found as a nurse, my God, man, I had so many interesting patients you would never believe because everybody had to go to the hospital.
Yes.
Whether you're building flight simulators at Wright Pat, or you were an aerospace engineer for whoever else, or you helped enrich uranium at, Oak Ridge Laboratory in Tennessee during World War II. I had multiple patients just start going, oh, if you would have told me one day that I'd be sitting in, San Francisco having dinner with Marilyn Manson in between a Guar show as the makeup artist, I would have said, you're crazy. And this lady looked like a Mennonite too. When she said this, I was just like, none of this made sense to me. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, oh yeah, I was the makeup artist for Guar for quite a while. And,
Wow.
travel. I was like, no, how, and so I was always fascinated in that sense. And so the show, being able to use this as well to kind of extend that out and now use it like a kind of as a bloodhound, okay, I can fine tune my sniffer to the kind of conversations we want to have a little bit more. Maybe I don't need all those conversations. Don't get me wrong. The Guar one was fun, but there were a lot that, obviously just hit far and wide and I would have to make them connect somehow. So with this, I would say even before we got to the show, what really was turning my tide, specifically on the Bigfoot scenario, was a podcast called Monsters Among Us, call-in show. A lot of just, I like to hear the firsthand account from someone. I need to hear your voice because I have ADHD. I love noises and I hate them at the same time. I love studying them and figuring them out and whatever. But I can listen to somebody's voice and I almost feel like Robert De Niro in Meet the Parents. I think I can hear that veracity. Are you putting me on? Or are you just telling me, there's kind of a intense scared, almost like people don't really sound calm a lot of times when they talk about seeing a Sasquatch.
They're freaked out.
Yeah. They're usually hunters. They're people that are out there, that's what they're looking for is game to hunt. And when they don't see that, whether it's a bear, that'll scare them too. You listen to accounts of hunters talking about running into a bear, has a very synonymous quality to listening to them talk about seeing a Sasquatch or something like that. They sound scared shitless, even though they have a weapon. It's not a scenario they want to be in. And I've encountered bears before, so I know what that feels like. I know what that feeling feels like, to feel like you are on the menu. It sucks. It is a rare instance in any life You can go to a zoo all you want, but unless they could like really, put you in that cage or close, like you just don't, you can't understand the fear of it. So I think that did it for me on the Sasquatch aspects. But the other
There's
one
been
is
a
just,
couple. There's been a
yeah,
couple. I love watching Bubs. My favorite thing about doing the show is when Mike Ricksecker or Ryan Singer or whoever it is blows Bub's mind with the story. Or our buddy Tom with the doppelganger story, which that might have been one that maybe you were going to mention. But um,
so good.
we've had some paranormal experiences ourselves, but nothing compared to most of our guests.
Right.
We've been interested in the paranormal as just a fun thing to discuss when we were, whether we're, toking it up back in the day or, on a cabin trip with all of our buddies.
Oh
And,
yeah.
we're getting deep
Campfire
and
stories.
intense
Yeah.
and so we've been having these conversations anyways forever. So
Yeah, this
these
is
kind of
basically an
long
extension of what we
form,
do all the time.
yes, long form conversations of just hours and hours of picking each other's brains, ideas, thoughts, telling stories about our own experiences and
Yeah.
um
Would you say the History Channel at that, when they start off with Ancient Aliens and Monster Quest? I don't know if it was Monster Quest as well, but
yeah,
whatever. When all those
Monster
shows really started
Quest.
kicking off and all there was definitely like kind of like a powder keg moment where it was like, holy cow, like everybody's been waiting for stuff like this. And, and obviously there are definitely points where I'm like, I can't really get down with that. But there are other ones where even if it's just getting your mind open to a new concept that you've never had before, that's a really tough one, right? So like even being presented with a different idea, like just for instance, I watched the unveiling of that new jet they put out the other day between Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and NASA. Did you see this thing?
No.
The nose on it is 1/3 the length of the plane is the nose. Does
Hmm.
that make sense? So this looks like
Yeah.
Pinocchio flying through
Right.
the
Yeah,
sky.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but that design helps to minimize the shock waves from this, you know, super duper fast jet. So like the
Yeah.
design that's coming about from this, and like, you start listening and you hear it back into ufology, you hear about all these cigars shaped, and it's like, in my mind, it just clicked. The pattern recognition just went off. It's like, oh, maybe that cigar shape helps with making those things quiet. Maybe that's, just part of it's, we talk about the Tic Tac UFO in that video from the Nimitz, like, but again, you start seeing this. I think we see a lot of it in slow releases, you know, even with Grush talking about the technology and, different aerospace companies potentially reverse engineering stuff. So like, I think stuff is just starting to bubble so hard that it's just going to bubble out. Like you said, what page of the story are we on, or what scene, or this or that part of the movie? Like, I literally think we're at like, we just started at Return of the King extended version on the 24-hour clock. You know what I mean?
Wouldn't be
Like
an episode without
humans,
you having a drop of some Lord of the Rings movie or book.
like humans on the 24-hour clock. We've been here like less than a minute. Let's put that in the Lord of the Rings and whatever. Like, the hobbits are just about to bow on top of, Gondor to the newly crowned Aragorn.
Now, Bub, I cut you off. I know you were getting ready to tell
Uh,
the audience about one of the things that shifted you.
oh yeah. Do you want to know a
I
shift, like what got me
yeah.
hard?
Yeah.
Well, there's been a couple. I think there's been a couple, and I've talked about them on our show. Like I've had to just say it because I'm like, well, this is what happened to me. And then again, I said it earlier too because like people corroborate it, and that's what'll make people go, okay, hey, at least I'm not crazy. This other person's saying a verbatim account, almost verbatim. I'm not crazy, and yeah, I was like, I started working day shift. My wife was still on night shift. We lived in this really old house in Columbus because we were renting it, and our house is still really old now. So who knows? Maybe it could happen again. But I was home alone, Kevin McAllister, going to bed, sober. No adulterants, not drunk, not out of my mind on anything, whatever you want to say. Not even caffeinated. I was just ready to go to bed, and I was laying there, and my feet were facing towards the door, and at the door was the stairwell, and that stairwell went down, and then on the other side of that stairwell was another room, right? So there's door, stairwell, door, right? So if you went up the stairs, you could turn left or turn right. And like, there's a light on the stairwell still. And, you know, sometimes you see a shadow, you're catching a shadow, you're like, whatever, don't even think about it. So I you know, see something, I'm like, whatever, you know, it's car driving by and this and that, you know, I'm doing the whole Scrooge, you know, sitting there, bit of mustard, whatever, piece of jelly. And the next thing you know, I could feel like the blanket lift up. I'm like, all right, it's different. Like I'm not
That's
having a sleep
different.
paralysis. Yeah, not having sleep paralysis. I've had that before. I'm just like sitting there and I can like feel the weight on the bed depress. And it's like, this is real. Like something's really happening. And I never felt anything touch me, if that makes any sense. But I could feel the manipulation of everything around me. And I could feel that weight like a bowling ball get on the bed or something, right? And then like I'm not even going to try to reduplicate the voice because it always just sounds stupid, but like just something whispering in my ear, like come closer, and it freaked me out. I was out. I was out of the house. I was up out of the bed. I was down the stairs. I was out the front door, and I was standing and looking back at my room window from outside within like, I don't know, 15 seconds probably. I'm pretty quick when I need to be, whether it's my house almost catching fire or that happening. And I mean, you know, my heart was just jackhammer. I was just like, what the F was that? And I just like sat there for a while. I was kind of like, well, what's my recourse here? And what did it really try to do? And, you know, I've got to be objective about this, and I'm still tired and it's cold. And it's like October, November. It was cold out. So I was like, okay, I get go back inside, I guess, and just hopefully nothing else happens again. And it didn't. And I went to bed, and I've never had a full on incident like that again. But the weird part is the story that I heard that was basically synonymous with that was from Dan Aykroyd. And I think it was one of the scenes he used in Ghostbusters, you know, was like he had, I mean, almost like a verbatim. And he said basically he didn't get out of bed. He was like, oh, it just wanted to cuddle.
Right.
I'm like, dude, no,
Dude,
no, I'm not cuddling. I'm sorry.
props to you, Danny boy, because
Right.
Dan is the man.
That's why I'm saying it. I was like, somebody else out there has almost a verbatim, like it's almost like they would have had to have been following me, watching to see it that day to have that story because I didn't tell anyone,
that's wild.
you know. So
You know,
that really changed me.
the manipulation of physical space and the things around us, and
Yeah.
yeah, and you can tell that it's, and then the you know, the disembodied voice on top
Now
of
that
everything else.
say,
'Cause
I gotta
if you're
say,
lucky, you get one of those things, right? Like when you're looking for paranormal stuff.
I have to say, I want to say that, you know, again, nobody else is there to vouch for it, so it's just me. So then I have to hold myself to the higher degree of culpability of going, Justin, did that really happen? And I know, yes, it did. Now I will say this though, too. I have had what is called exploding head syndrome. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up. It's just like if somebody had a soundboard in your head and they could push a button and be like, pow, whoop, you know, whatever the noise would be in your head, you could literally just have and they're full on auditory. You hear it as well, like your auditory nerve fires and everything, but it is just a impulse signal. It's not real, you know, but you might hear somebody slam a door, like not real. So just saying it could have been that,
I mean,
but
I understand you and I appreciate you saying that. And I'm of the mind to think that, like, well, phenomena is a very personal, individual experience.
yeah,
And if you have exploding head syndrome, phenomena has an intelligence potentially that could be like, let's manipulate his exploding head syndrome right now.
wow, fair.
So, you know, much in the same way, if someone has something else, phenomena could, that's very specific to them, it could manipulate that. It could push that button for the other person, right? So,
Right. Good point.
but I mean, you know, I know. Oof, wow, that's a really fascinating story, and I don't think I'd
It's
ever
a good
sleep
one.
in. I don't know if I'd. I mean, I don't know. I would have slept on the couch, or I would have slept somewhere else that night. I mean, you got back in the bed. It sounds like I don't know if I would have been able to do such a thing, but
I mean, maybe it was for a good reason because that house also, when we were renting it, we were sleeping one night and it was raining and apparently there was a leak in the roof and it woke us up because our ceiling turned into a water feature and it was like a fountain and it went across both of our, like basically across our shins. It like just hit the bed and woke us up and was just dumping water. And I had had the worst day ever as like in my career as a nurse that day. And it just was all, culminate. And my wife, I still remember her going, "What are we going to do?" I was like, "Nothing. I'm going to bed." I was like, "I don't care if the roof collapses on me right now. I'm like here. Like, I don't care about anything
Yeah.
anymore." So it was just fitting. But, maybe the black shadow person again, who didn't, as far as I can tell, didn't put any ill will towards me other than they didn't introduce themselves, which would have been a little bit nicer because I didn't know who I
Yeah.
was dealing with,
Well, I mean, if you're saying there's no ill will, then there wasn't. I mean, you would have sensed it, I guess.
Right.
Is my
Right.
yeah.
Didn't try to trip me on my way out, nothing like that, because that would have been bad. I had steep steps, so that would have been that would have been a spinal if I would have fell going down those real steep steps. I mean, yeah. Interesting times.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty intense encounter.
Well, I never thought I would have like anything like that happen, I guess. And I guess again, I would equate it to, and not that this is as impossible because you can go do it easier, but again, it's just unless you go do it, like encountering a wild animal like that grizzly bear that time. Like I remember the guy that we told at the lodge, I was like, "Yeah, I really want to see one." And after I did, I was like, "Dude, I don't ever want to see a grizzly bear again." He was like, "It's not cool, is it?" He's like, it's not cool to see something that could end your life like quick. I'm like, "No, it's terrifying. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
It's awe-inspiring, but it's horrifying."
And it's not even cool to not see it, but hear it. Even.
Yeah.
It's not even cool for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Now I just heard a noise in this house. Unbelievable. The trickster. The trickster. Yeah. Okay. Well, Mikey, do you have like one moment or something that you've really turned the corner on that you didn't believe at all, and now after doing the show for a while, you're on board with?
Yeah, I mean, I believed, I guess you could say, pretty much almost everything in terms of the paranormal, UFOs. I've always felt like there were, you know, the big things are like the doppelganger stories from Tom and some of those kind of things where it's like kind of a sub genre of the paranormal where it's paranormal. Is it a time loop? Is it, what Mike
Right.
Ricksecker talks about is stacked time theory and some of those kind of things. But I've just never thought about what a doppelganger was very deeply until we started this show. Now, doppelganger stories are just coming at us from all angles. Like I've never, talked about doppelgangers as much of my entire life until the last year. So, you know, hearing Lindsay Brisbine's demonic haunting story from when she lived in Akron from the Chilling
That's
podcast was
terrifying.
phenomenal. We listened to her whole I couldn't listen to it at night
Yeah.
because it's like
Same. Wouldn't listen to it in bed. I was trying to go to sleep one night with headphones on. I got like 2 minutes in. I was like, "No,
Hell
Yeah.
no. Hell
Yeah.
no.
no,
Hell no.
there are no
And
sweet
it's-
dreams coming after this."
very well produced, and I had kind of moved on from demonic hauntings, and there was a time
Yeah.
in my 20s where Bub, you can attest, where I was obsessed with
Yep.
demonology, learning about exorcisms and things like that have happened
Yeah.
in the past, and I had to, it's one of those things like conspiracies, demonic hauntings, those things I had to take a real break from because again, it's that darkness. And so, Lindsay she just kind of brought me back into that. Next thing you know, I'm watching testimonials on demonic entities, on demonic hauntings on YouTube. I'm watching the show A Haunting that I think is on Max now. You can watch all the episodes of A Haunting on there, which are all basically demonic hauntings. I mean, the worst of the worst. And so, I was just had always thought, hey, it's kind of one of those things that I've moved on from. Nope. I dove back into it after Lindsay's. It was around Halloween too. So, that that hasn't struck me a nerve like that in a while. But learning about the Serpent Mound crop circle and the strange nature of it essentially showing the frequency of the diatronic scale. So the geometry is literally a representation of a musical scale. So it has some kind of harmonic frequency, some sort of vibrational technology encoded into it. The way that it's aligned to the mound itself, and how, the eyeball of it goes directly through the cosmic egg of the serpent's head. And, so I heard about the Serpent Mound crop circle, but Jeffrey was on the ground researching it when it happened. This is something we'd love to do a documentary on, Ryan.
This
We've
sounds
met
amazing. And yeah, 100%.
we've met some of the guys, and I've talked to now a few of the guys that were on the ground with Jeffrey before Jeffrey had ever lived there, because he had went to Serpent Mound in college years before that, and then Delcy found him and called him to come down and research it, and then basically he just never left. Jeffrey, I believe,
Yeah.
is with had a wife, and Delcy was married, and then next thing you know, they're married, and Jeffrey's living next door to Serpent Mountain for the last 20 years, all from this crop circle. That's how they met, was inside this crop circle.
Don't take your
It's an
work home
amazing
unless
love
your
story.
work is your home.
Yeah, yeah. And then he goes from crop circles, just dives deep into the Serpent Mound and researching everything he possibly can about it.
Well, I
But
mean, you guys have the, the wherewithal and the resources, I imagine, potentially too, to make a killer doc about this.
yeah, it's a
Um,
really cool story. It's a
I'd be
really
interested
cool
to
story.
see, if you guys, what happens with this. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, this whole harmonic scale thing it's blowing my mind, because I mean, you know, math is the language of the universe and music
Yeah,
is math. So for me, like on paranormal investigations, I like to incorporate music because I believe it, let's use the language of the universe, right?
yeah,
To communicate with other things that are part of the universe. And, whether it's, what is it? Space Odyssey 2001 or whatever. I think
Yeah.
they also, they touch on this, I think. But to me, it makes a lot of sense, even though I don't fully comprehend it. If that,
yeah.
if
We
that
don't
makes sense.
either. Yeah.
Well, and they
And
do Close Encounters of the Third Kind on top of
Or
the
that,
plateau or the mesa,
or that's what I mean. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're doing the little do 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 do.
That's
They
what I
speed
was.
it
Yeah,
up
that's what
and
I meant to reference.
oh yeah, I love that part.
Yeah, that's wild.
can we take a quick timeout? Is that possible?
I think we got to maybe even wrap.
Yeah, okay.
That's what
Cool.
yeah, I was thinking that's totally fine.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think we're gonna wrap here.
Perfect.
So I'll drop a beat, and you guys just start spitting rhymes for the rap. Well, this has been great. And I think once I'm, we'll talk about, me trying to be able to get back over to the studio at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
In the somewhat near future as well. But I really appreciate you guys making the time tonight to out of your busy schedules to jump on the show. I really appreciate
Anytime.
it. It's like
Yep,
really
anytime,
cool,
man.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a really good dynamic. You have different perspectives that really accentuate each other, and they work well together. I got a deep dive on Jeffrey Wilson for sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm just fascinated by all this stuff.
ICCRA.org. ICCRA.org. That's his website that just deals with crop circles.
It's crop circle research.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm guessing it's like International Crop Circle Research Association.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's do one last plug for everybody for the show and for everything else.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Mikey and
Bub.
buddy Bub here, and we are the Strange Road Podcast. You guys can find us at the Strange Road, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We have a Facebook group, Strange Road Hitchhikers. Check out the merch store. Our link tree is all over the place, so you can head over to the YouTube channel, give us some love over there. All of our channels are, growing pretty nicely, and we appreciate anybody that's out there supporting us. And if you guys make your way over, we appreciate the hell out of all you guys.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. And I'm trying to see when the date is on this. Okay, shoot. This is going to come out right around my for the 10-year anniversary, I think.
Okay.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think this will be a great one for that.
Heck yes.
So I appreciate you guys. Love you guys,
dude.
Love
the
you, man.
Stranger Road's
Thank you so
rad.
much.
Thank
you so much.
The show's bonkers. It's great. Everything about it. It's just oh, it's just so funny. My buddy Dan Butler's calling me. He's a former game warden
wow.
Nice.
Bigfoot researcher.
Nice.
wow.
But
Come on.
he'd be a good guy
Tell him
to,
to jump
to chat
on.
with. I don't know if he does.
Totally.
I haven't even had him on my podcast, which is strange. I've known him since my Florida experience in 19. But
Oh yeah.
but he's a fascinating guy to chat to. He's one of the guys. I'll just put a bow on the conversation with this, like asking you about what's the thing you've changed your mind about. When I first started this podcast, I was like, if one more person mentions the dog man to me, I'm going to tell them to get out of my life, lose my phone number, lose my phone number because I'm not interested in. Can we stop? We're just going to take every animal and throw the word man on the back of it. This is ridiculous.
Right.
We're losing all credibility. Cut to now. I'm like, I hope I never see the dog man.
Dude.
Right. So, but yeah, so thanks again, you guys, for coming on. Appreciate it. TheStrangeRoad.com. You can find everything. And, love you guys.
Love you, man.
Thanks for
Appreciate
listening,
the hell out of
everybody.
you.
Make sure you check out their show. It's a live stream on Mondays. You'll love it. And I hope to see you at a live show somewhere, maybe, or a comedy show or something like that. If I don't, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.